Before we can dissect the mechanics of a poem, we have to experience it in its intended form. Under the radar, union of spirits, the hive thinks collectively against threats to those who thrive within dark castle crypts. The star at the top of their eternity tree pretends command of things significant because the top is the top of nothing. Eugene Cantrall's The Top of Nothing relies on free verse, paradox, and evocative imagery. Together, these elements construct a study on the mechanics of power and collective survival. This diagram displays the text's varying line lengths. The author's structural choice of free verse is deliberate. By rejecting a strict meter, the poem's lack of a rigid grid mirrors the text's underlying rejection of a rigid hierarchy. This brings us to a core pedagogical concept: intentional ambiguity. Rigorous literature is designed to remain open to multiple interpretations without losing its internal logic. The poem's broad symbols act as an open allegorical matrix. The text can absorb entirely different historical or metaphysical frameworks, and it does so without contradicting itself. Polysemy is not guesswork. It is a feature of highly adaptable writing, where multiple realities are validated by the exact same words. Let's examine the lexicographic divide. Words denoting group cohesion, union, hive, and collectively, are separated from singular entities like star and command. This creates a spatial tension. Collective concepts drop to the bottom, while isolated terms rise to the peak, leaving an empty gap. The author pairs Gothic vocabulary with modern, stealth-oriented phrases, generating a constant atmosphere of timeless unease. Mechanically, this builds a blueprint. The poem establishes a dynamic where subterranean pragmatism poses a direct threat to isolated, performative leadership. We can apply this blueprint to a strict metaphysical framework. Read through a demonic lens, the poem maps to a literal hierarchy of hell. Here, the hive and the union of spirits represent a conspiratorial collective of demonic entities. These entities operate out of sight. They utilize groupthink to survive within a physical region of the underworld, justified by the text's dark castle crypts. Look at this structural hierarchy tree. The isolated star maps directly to Satan, at the peak of a cosmic order. But his authority is an illusion. Because the demonic collective rejects leadership, he merely pretends to command them, severing his connection. Through a metaphysical reading, the apex of absolute evil is exposed structurally as an existential void. Let's demonstrate polysemy in action by shifting our aesthetic. We can apply the exact same text to the historical reality of early 20th century Imperial Russia. Here, the hive represents the clandestine socialist revolutionaries conspiring against the monarchy. Hunted by the state, they relied strictly on the collective survival of their ununiformed ranks to counter systemic threats. The dark castle crypts represent both the literal underground cellars where dissenters met and the sprawling shadow of the massive palaces they sought to undermine. In a historical context, the text accurately diagnoses a pressure cooker environment. A marginalized political base is forced into stealth cooperation. The eternity tree now becomes the ancient, rigid, and supposedly divinely ordained hierarchy of Russian imperialism. The star maps directly to Tsar Nicholas II, situated at the absolute peak of this towering political structure. The phrase pretends command dissects his authority. The Tsar's power relies entirely on superficial, performative markers rather than actual control. The revolutionaries realized that a monarchy detached from the will of the hive is structurally hollow. When the collective base simply refuses to recognize the hierarchy, the entire system collapses, leaving the Tsar sitting at the top of nothing. Historically, the text traces the exact mechanical collapse of autocracy that occurs when the base disconnects from the apex. Placing these frameworks side by side proves our core lesson. Intentional ambiguity works because the structural logic holds true across contexts. Stripping away the labels reveals the exact same skeleton: a dense, active foundation and a severed floating point at the top. This delivers the existential insight of the final line. Striving for the top of a hierarchy does not grant ultimate control. It merely leads to structural isolation. The specific lexicographic pairings of pretends with command and top with nothing, are engineered to instill a deep skepticism regarding the inherent value of ambition. While specific imagery creates a mood, a text's true academic value is found in its adaptability to different hermeneutic lenses. Whether we are examining demons or dictators, the mechanical truth remains consistent. Top-down authority is ultimately an illusion, sustained only by those at the bottom.